Alrighty. Alrighty. Good evening. Hi. All right, there we go. Hi, Asha. How are you?
Good, good. Nice to see you, Nolene. Good to be here.
Nice to see you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Our mentor for the week. I appreciate it, and I'm sure the audience appreciates it too. Thank you so much.
No, it's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me as well, Nolene.
Alrighty. And congratulations on your award, receiving the top 40 under 40 women in Kenya for the year 2024. Congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It feels like a combination of many things, but yeah, I appreciated the vote of
Mhm. Alrighty. I think the internet got finicky there. Kidogo. Just give us a moment. All right.
no.
Sorry, there was a glitch with the internet for a second there.
Hopefully it's stable now. Okay, I can see it's stable. So, but in case of anything, I might change. But it's stable for now.
Alrighty. Okay. So thank you for joining us today. I'll just get us right into it in the interest of time. My name is Noeline Mumbi. I am a strategic supply chain professional, but today I'm showing up as the host of Safe Space, which is a mentorship space for everyone, anyone, not industry specific, not topic specific. It's basically a collation of topics of interest as far as mentorship is concerned. And this evening, I am joined by Asha Mweru, one of our winners for top 40 under 40 women in Kenya this year. And I'm going to read you her bio. Just give me one moment. I put it up on the screen. So, Asha Mweru Mboa, driving growth across Africa. As the founding managing director of enterprise at the African Management Institute, AMI, she has consistently defined and executed growth strategies that transform ideas into impactful businesses. Under her leadership, AMI achieved a sevenfold revenue increase in 12 months, expanded the client base from 10 to 100, and scaled operations across five key African markets, including Nigeria, Uganda, Senegal, Rwanda, and Kenya. Asha excels in forming high performing teams and equipping them for success. She is adept at designing go to market strategies that align with market needs, building organizational structures, and leading teams to exceed sales targets. Her ability to operate at multiple levels of leadership, whether setting strategic direction, executing growth plans, or coaching emerging leaders, enables her to foster innovation and deliver measurable results. A lifelong learner, Asha is currently pursuing an MBA in management at Harvard Extension School to deepen her expertise. She brings over a decade of experience in scaling businesses, developing growth strategies, and collaborating across diverse teams and leadership levels. Asha's thought leadership extends beyond her professional roles, having lectured on entrepreneurship and served as an advisor for key initiatives. Asha has also been recognized as one of Kenya's top 40 under 40 women in 2024 as she continues to shape Africa's business landscape. She advises JobTech Alliance and Clean Team Ghana, focusing on job creation and delivering affordable sanitation solutions across the continent. Asha holds a BS in Business and Information Technology from Strathmore University. As a co founder of Women Work, she built a digital community that grew to over 60,000 women entrepreneurs in Kenya and Ghana. empowering them through skill building programs that impacted over 1,000 women. Previously, she led the expansion of entrepreneurial programs at Synapis Group and managed several $1 million in investment deals at Novasta Venture Fund, showcasing her versatility in both advisory and operational roles. Karibu sana, Asha. It's absolutely wonderful to have you with us this evening.
Thank you so much, Nolene. That was a long bye. I should have sent you something shorter.
Oh, I loved it. It's very well detailed. I can see
Hopefully, it
your
was used.
career progression, everything that you've done. Yes, absolutely wonderful. I love it. It's very detailed and very to the point, and actually speaks to why you're our guest mentor for today as we speak about building high performing teams.
Awesome.
All right. So we'll just jump right into it. We're talking about building high performing teams today. And I'll hand it over to you and start you off with a question. How would you define a high performing team?
Great. So I'm going to start that with kind of like a story of when a high performing team, um, of what a high performing team is, and how that really kind of became clearer to me in career. So I think not that long ago, maybe about 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to visit somebody at Stanford University in California, which is it's a fantastic, beautiful university. And one of the things they did is they walked me through their sports facility, and there they have a pool that is really massive. You know that we have some of the best Olympic swimmers coming from Stanford, but he didn't this person didn't even rave about the amazing pool they have, the swimmers. He went ahead and straight talked to me about the rowing team they have. So if you imagine just rowing, think about a boat. You have 3 to I think 4 people on each side just rowing, right? And lots of people just don't think about it. They're like, yeah, rowing, you know, we will get there when we get there. But essentially, what he was talking about was rowing was one of the most sought after sports because anybody who belonged to that team was considered a high team player, right? An A team player. But it wasn't just that team that or that individual that made that team a high performing team. It was that collection. It was the collection that these people individually have different strengths, different personalities, different ways of doing things. But when they get on the boat, they know that they have a mission to win and they row together. So even though you'd find that different rowers might need to go slightly to the left, slightly to the right, other people might use the most strength. Other people might slightly use slightly less strength and really steer the boat in the way that it should go. Everybody has a responsibility to win, right? So for me, a high performing team is not a team made of, just individual, very good people who just do their thing. It's a team of people who can row together, who have the skills and abilities to do things, even though differently, they have a harmony of doing things together to win, to not just get from point A to B, but they collectively see the vision, they collectively align on that vision, and they all know they need each other because it's true on that boat they all need each other. So that for me is a high performing team. And many times I think in people's career and as they're thinking about assembling teams, you think about, I need this one person, I need this one person. Well, it's you can have 20,000 really really good people, but if they're not able to get on the boat, understand the vision, and row together, you still do not have a high performing team. You have A players, and we know that you can have A players, but you can still not be able to get to the finish line. So that for me is a high performing team.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for even using this analogy. It really brings the concept into, how do you say, focus. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. So, you've worked across different countries in the African continent. And I'm curious to find out, in your experience, what are the core values that underpin a high performing team?
I'm going to start with a baseline. Um, Core value is trust, that you must trust, followed by respect. Those two almost come hand in hand. And why do I start with that? Because there is no way. Let's just, I probably will use the boat until the end, but I think because it really kind of shows you the depth of what that team is. So imagine you have that team and they do not trust each other. It means that one person will always be looking at the other, sorry, the other person will always be feeling like one person is not doing enough. And if they don't respect each other, then again they don't trust each other, right? So to start off, that team has to have an environment where they trust each other, and that environment has to be built also with respect. So it kind of starts with that. So think about it like a pyramid. I would say a stack. Think about it like a stack of things. So starting with trust and respect as the underpinning things that are needed for you to build a really high performing team. And obviously I'm assuming you've already covered the level of skill needed and you really thought about what is needed, and we can talk about that a little later. So after you have that, the next thing that you need to be able to build is a level of accountability and ownership, but also transparency. So you'll find that you have good teams or people who come well together, but they can't be asked, hey, Nolene, we didn't see you at practice today. What happened? And that is asked openly, right? And you hold, and there's ownership. And Nolene can say, I'm really sorry I let the team down today. I didn't come for practice and I knew we had a big, maybe match, but I can stay maybe longer today, can practice a little harder, something like that. Right. So remember, you have trust where people can speak openly, they respect each other. So even when you ask, there's a level of respect that you're doing it with. And then you're stacking that with accountability, ownership, and transparency. And I'm butching that because it's important not just to be accountable, but to have to own it and to be transparent, right? So the team can see what is happening, the team can see what you're bringing to the table, the team can see that you're owning your own results, and the team is able to respond to that quite well. And I think the final thing for me is commitment, right? You cannot build a high performing team without a level of commitment. Is every person who is on the boat committed to winning? Because with that commitment, let me tell you, you will have resilience when things get tough. You will have a level of grittiness where you say, okay, I know this is hard, but I'm sticking with it and I owe it to my team members. Think about you training, right? It's tough to train, but you want to stick it out because you want to win, or you committed to it. So these are the values that are needed. And as a leader who's building that team, those are the things that you're constantly thinking about building. And the way you build them is primarily by modeling it. Talk is cheap. Model it. When you didn't do something, come up to it. If your word is gold, then make sure your word, if you say something, deliver on it. If it wasn't delivered, model what you want to see. If somebody wasn't accountable, respectfully and openly ask them, we said you're going to do this. Why wasn't it done? Right? So those are some of the things that I think are really critical.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, the question, I know you've spoken a little bit about why they are important and how they tie into each other with the trust, the respect,
Yeah.
the accountability, the ownership, commitment, and modeling it as a leader. Because when I speak to subject matter experts, the guest mentors, I try to look at it from both ends, as a leader and as a team player. How
Yeah.
do we adapt what is being taught on? And my next question to you becomes, why do you think these values are important for achieving high
Mhm.
performance?
Yeah.
And what are their
Um,
benefits for the approach? One at a time. Why are they important?
why are they important? So I love this quote where people say, man plans and God laughs, right? We plan a lot of things, right? Um, and they never go to, I mean, not everything goes as planned. sometimes fortunately and sometimes unfortunately. And I like to say plan for the best and plan for the worst and expect the best. And a good benefit of really making sure you have those things in your team, those values are embedded in your team, is because it allows you to make decisions quickly and effectively. Imagine you don't have trust. Imagine you're not accountable. Imagine you're not transparent. Imagine you don't have respect. Decisions can never be made, right? So, one, it allows you, and in a business, in an organization, things are always happening out of plan. And you need to make those decisions as a team. Sometimes your team leader says, this is what we're going to do. And as a team, you must say, I don't agree to it, but I'm committed to it, right? I commit, I commit, I commit. And it's one of, I think, AWS's, Amazon's principles: disagree but commit, right? So if the team has said this is what we're going to do, then that's what needs to happen. So one of the benefits or the whys is because it allows you to make good decisions and to make them quickly while you're still not on the plan. You're not bickering with each other, you're not fighting, you're making the right decision that's required for you to actually achieve the plan that needed to happen. The second thing and why it's important is it allows innovation. A high performing team that is stifled by disrespect, that is stifled by non transparency, lack of ownership, accountability issues, lack of commitment, it will never you will never have innovation happening. You won't have people questioning, wanting to improve. Again, imagine the boat, right? They're probably sitting with each other and saying, maybe the strongest guy to sit at the front. What if the strongest guy sat at the back, right? So they're kind of innovating, finding different ways to really get to where you need to get to. And those are the things that you want in a business. So you see, Nolene, I think one of the things I've also seen is that lots of people are very quick to think about, when you think about high performing teams, they're not magicians, by the way. They need to work well together to be able to achieve. So don't focus just on the outcomes, focus on their environment and focus on the behaviors that they're bringing to the team. Those are really important. By the time you're hiring a high performing team member, you're already assuming they have high skills, they've proven themselves in another organization. And what you want to do is enable really, really good behavior there, and really making sure that essentially they feel that they can improve the things that they're finding at that place effectively. And I think the third thing that I would say is one of the key benefits as well is that you kind of create a benchmark, right? You create an aura of excellence. You create an aura of this is what best looks like, right? And this is who we are. And they kind of ripple effect. It's the same way as one rotten tomato spoils all the others. It's the same way as a few really good people can really enable a company to level up. I'd say that. So those are some of the benefits I'd say.
Okay. So making decisions faster,
Mm.
innovation, and
Mm-hmm.
what was the last one? How do I summarize the last one?
um I don't know, level, I don't know, benchmarking or
Benchmarking,
benchmarking
baseline setting.
excellence. Yeah, yeah,
Mm. Oh,
yeah.
fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because I rarely ever hear it said. I think you're actually the first person I'm hearing say the opposite, because we focus so much on the fact that one rotten apple, one rotten tomato spoils the whole bunch. Rarely do we ever hear the narrative of that one good person, two good people, two high performers can actually shift the dynamic of the team to
Yeah,
become a positive
absolutely.
thing.
Yeah, and there's also a myth sometimes I think we've taken too far, that as a manager managing a high performing team, that you must always focus on your non-performing people. I'm like, come on, you can't spend 90% of your time and energy on the least performing person. The place you actually should be spending your energy is rising stars and your top players. Rising stars to get them to that next level by coaching, and your top players to keep them kind of motivated and going on. But the idea that as a manager you're really supporting 90% of your kind of bottom players is not that's not what business is about, and that's not what really strong leadership is about. Yeah.
Truth. Very, very true. So, having done all this, I know you've talked about the pros, so we won't dive into this again because it's in there from what you've just spoken about.
Mhm.
How do you go about building a high performing team from the ground up? Say, for example, you've just joined a team. Your task is to turn it around, make it a high
Mhm.
performing team. How do you go about this?
Yeah. So I've done this, I think, almost 3 times now. This is kind of what I feel like I'm quite strong at. I think the very first thing that you need to do is understand the drivers of your organization or your business, right? You cannot build a high performing team if you do not understand the requirements that are going to help you get to that performance goal that you have, right? And let me make it less theoretical and make it more practical. You're trying to put together a team of rowers for your boat. And what you need to understand is, one, is there a height specification? Um, what kind of strength do they need? What kind of timelines do we need to have? What kind of prior experience do they have? Do they need to be runners? So you're kind of thinking about that, right? But you're thinking about that with an end goal in mind, which is I want to win. So you know that the key drivers is probably strength, experience, and resilience, right? So, my apologies. I have a visitor who will come in and out. So, um, let me finish a call and then you'll come, okay? Sorry about that, Nolene. So, you're thinking about those
It's
three
okay. It's
being
perfectly fine.
the yeah, so when my kids come home, first person, but you're thinking about those key drivers. So you know that again, it's experiences, strength, and resilience, right? And then you're using that. Now, you think about who are the right people to drive those key levers, the motions, Nolene, right? So I've seen often people start and say, I'm starting an organization that's doing sales. Ah, let me find marketing people, let me find sales people, and then let me find tech people. And asked to do it. What kind of, there are million salespeople. Like, what kind of salesperson do you want? Why is a salesperson needed? What kind of targets would they have? What kind of background would they, they just need to be selling? No. All right. Start with the foundation of, start with the business. Don't start with the people in mind. Start with the business in mind. What is the goal of the business? If it's sales, then you know I'm one of my key drivers is really good salespeople, particularly in what experience with what strength. The next thing is that, so understand those drivers, number one. All right. And then from there, address the functions within those drivers. All right. So instead of saying, I need, again, I've seen this especially in marketing, um, I need marketing people. Nolene, you and I know that how many marketing disciplines are there? They're like, there's growth marketing, there's digital marketing, there's graphic, like there's so much within marketing. So don't start with, I need a content marketer. Start with the function. I need content marketing to be able to do what, right? Whether it's a content marketer, you don't know. Maybe it could be a brand person. Maybe you could combine three functions and find one person for it. It just depends. Start with the function. So remember, we started with the business. We then went into the functions, and a function is not the title of a person, it is the thing that you want. So if it's in sales, you want somebody who can do lead generation, for example. If it's in people, you want a, instead of thinking I need a human resource director, you're thinking I need a strong people experienced, maybe compliance, because maybe your company, you'll need compliance. So you're not thinking HR manager, you're thinking compliance in people, right? So that's kind of the second thing that you want to focus on. So first think about business, then then you think about the functions that you want, and then from there clearly define what success looks like for these functions. What does success look like for these functions? Remember, we're still not even in people, right? So I've first understood what are the key things that are driving my business or my organization. And then I went into what are the key functions that are going to drive this business within the key functions as well, with the key pillars. And then from there, I define what success looks like. Then from there, I'm like, okay, who are the people that are going to enable this success? So when I speak to, and then I think, okay, maybe a business development manager. And when I'm interviewing with, will this person give me the success that would look like, right? And I've seen lots of people start with the opposite. You start with the people, then you say, okay, what can you do for me? This is what I wanted. Can you do it? And then you define your goals. So start with the business in mind, and then go ahead. And then from there, when you're building a company from ground up, I think I'm very much of the school of thought that you need to be very hands-on. It's a very model-like behavior where you're hands-on and you're setting the pace. There are different kinds of leaders, and at different times, you become a different leader every time you start a company. So, for example, Nolene, maybe you're a democratic leader, but when in times of crisis, you cannot be democratic. You have to be very clear and like almost dictator, like this is what we're going to do, right? Similarly, when you're starting a team from ground up, your role is to be a pace setter, a visionary as well, and also to kind of, these are the two things I probably have been in most of the times I've built teams from ground up. I'm building momentum, right? You need a lot of momentum to get the wheel to move, for people to feel the energy, and they come to work and they're seeing things, and it takes a lot of energy even for that individual. So pace yourself. You cannot hire too quickly, because remember, you're trying to build that momentum, and when the wheels have gone fast enough, you can even just step back and start to build processes. You see. So those are some of the things I would say. I know I've spoken a lot, but I really wanted to make sure that that analogy comes out clearly.
I think what you said is very, very profound because I'm in governance and process excellence. And you find most times the approach is usually the other way around, what you
Yes.
just said. And as you're speaking, I'm beginning to see, okay, so this might be the reason why I experience challenge X, Y, or Z.
Exactly.
Because most times we
Exactly.
are told, ask the people what is working, what is not working. And losing sight of the
Of
fact
the
that
of,
what does the business want?
exactly.
What should the function be delivering? What will look like success? Very, very profound. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Totally hit the nail on the head.
Good.
So
Good.
you've said about you look at what the business wants, you drill down to what the function should be delivering, you drill down to what does the picture of success look like, then you find the person who fits into the success story. When you
Yeah.
find the person, how do you set clear goals and expectations to ensure that they stay aligned with the vision that you have, aligned with the team, to make sure that as we're building momentum, we don't have, the cog in between the wheel that slows us down or totally puts us into a gridlock. How do we set these clear goals?
Yeah. And I'm sure everybody's going to be listening, as well as you, Nolene. You know how to set clear goals. You've used SMART before. You've probably heard about OKRs. But I guess a big question is, what happens, right? We set clear goals, there's still confusion. What happens there, right? Because you said these are the things. I'm sure everybody has set clear goals, has set some goals at least, right? But then something doesn't quite work well. And this is what I think. One, before you set those goals, start with thinking about a 30, 60, 90-day plan. Remove the goals in your mind and think about 30, 60, 90-day plan. Start with that and think about, what must they know? What must they do? What must they show? I hope that that's clear. So you're starting with, what must they know? Because for you to be able to achieve the things you need to achieve, you must know certain things about the business. And so if I say, Nolene, as part of, let's say you join AMI, I say, within 3 months, I would like to make sure that you build an entire value chain for AMI. There's no way you can do that in 30 days, even though you have the skills and expertise. So I set the wrong target for you, right? So that's the first thing. What must I know, right? What must I do, right, is the next step. What you must do, for example, Nolene, is understand the steps. I'm using your language, so obviously it will sound bad, but what are the steps within the value chain? What does the chain look like? Where are the stops, where are the gaps, right? So you must evaluate that. So actually, in your goal, you should have had something like evaluate the opportunities and gaps in the value chain at X, Y, Z, or AMI. Third thing, what must they show? The third thing that they must show is one, their understanding, but you want to be able to see perhaps a view of that research, but and say approval to get one thing done. So when you have the high performing team, again, I said they're not magicians. And as they come into the organization, they will perform at an exceptionally high level. But first, they must know what they don't know to be able to perform in that role. They must do prerequisite things to be able to give you those the right targets or the right things, and they must show you progress. Right. So I would say in your 30 to when people are start when you kind of start to hire these people, rather than big outcomes, think about small incremental, what they know, how they're showing it, and what they're doing on a day-to-day basis to really enable that, because you will get those results. But if you don't set them up for success, then you're probably doing a big disservice to them. But pair that with, of course, do smart goals, of course, do OKRs, but think about what must they first
No,
know, what must they
what
show,
must they
and
show?
sorry, what must they know, what must
Mhm.
they do, what must they show.
What must they show?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. That really helps. More so because I know most of us, this is a season that we are going into to start creating our goals for the coming year and wrapping up on our 2024 goals. So that adds on a layer of clarity over and above being told, go set smart goals and. What must I do? What must I know? What must I do? What must I show to make it
Yeah.
objective? So after we've done all this, you have the team, they know what they're supposed to be doing. They are doing it. We are assuming they have standard works in there. They are showing it progressively. But something happens along the line and you have that disengaged team member, or the whole team is like, yeah, we are not feeling this. We,
Mm.
brilliant vision, thank you very much, but we're not really feeling it. So can you share an example of a time when you successfully motivated a disengaged team or member? What was your approach?
Yeah, it's always tough because I personally I'm an energy feeder. So people with low energy make me feel sad, and people with high energy make me feel high energy as well. So I'm unfortunate in that way, and fortunate as well in that way. And when you have a disengaged team member, there are many reasons for disengagement. I think you have to understand the root cause, and a root cause is not a surface level response like, I'm feeling stressed. Yeah, I'm just stressed right now. Things are tough. Or this person said this to me and I feel like, it wasn't called for. Um, you have to understand the root cause. Root cause, for example, if two people are arguing a lot, root cause could probably be one person is not feeling respected, the other person is not feeling heard, but that's not even a root cause, right? So, for example, in my case, I had a team member who was arguing a lot with this other person. And the reason is because they almost had clashing goals. So, for example, Nolene, if my goal is to ensure budget efficiency, and your goal, Nolene, is to ensure that we have the best kind of value chain process, then you're thinking, listen, can we spend money to make sure that we are getting the best, maybe ERP, right? Versus I'm like, no, I'm going to be judged on how much we spent. So I'm not going to give you the money. You see how those two are conflicting? And that is usually the hardest one to solve because while they're two good people, they just can't, they have mismatching goals within a same team. So it becomes problematic. So, one, you need to understand the root cause of it. Um, and one other thing I've realized as well is there are many ways to solve different things. There's a process way to solve it. Personality problems also are usually the most difficult to solve. And I guess it's, humans are hard beings, but that's something to also really think about. So, is it a personality issue? Is it a process issue? Is it a mismatch of goals? What kind of, I think the other thing is like, what triggers it? For example, you'll find that in that case, the mismatch is because Nolene wants to be able to create this amazing system, and that's part of her OKRs. Versus in my OKRs is to improve cost efficiency. So at that particular time, it's aggravated because we both are trying to hit our goals, but for you to hit that goal, it would mean me not hitting mine. So it's really being able to understand that and being able to come in and solve for that. The other thing is, and maybe I'm still kind of 50-50 on this. You must, as a leader, be able to tell when to jump in and help solve and when to let adults solve it themselves, and provide guidance and provide an environment of respect. But usually, adults should be able to solve this themselves. So when you jump in and say, okay, let me help you solve this, what happens is you create a dynamic that is a belief system that all squabbles must come to you versus can we sit down and understand this, right? And then when you, for example, Nolene and myself have understood that our OKRs are mismatching, we then take it back to our leader and say, hey, we're arguing because there's no alignment here. So understand the root cause, um, be able to provide an environment that people can speak directly with each other rather than I'm coming to you and telling you what's wrong, um, and then act quickly, because what happens is disengagement can breed that rotten tomato and kind of lower team spirits, if you can act quickly.
Right, right. So find out what the root cause is to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that. Next question. What are the biggest challenges you've encountered? So I'm assuming in this scenario that we are building up on, we've resolved our disengagement within the team and now we've built up momentum. So the next issue becomes, what's the biggest challenge you've encountered while trying to build and maintain a high performing team?
I don't know what if the people usually say when you're going through that problem, it is the biggest challenge at the moment. So I feel
Hmm.
like I've gone through several, and I don't know if this is the biggest, but one that I found that you need to really be able to culturally fix, and the culture, especially culture pieces. When you have a high performing team, sometimes what happens is, and I agree, not the entire team will be high performing, but you'll have subsets of teams that are super high performing. Sometimes what happens is they create a culture of exceptionalism, right? So, you know, Nolene has been so good at her job. Okay, she came to work late a few times. Ah, it's fine. But even if our values say that people show up at work on time, but Nolene is a star. So should I really be asking her about coming to the office late? Who cares, right? So what would you do in that case, Nolene? High performing person, high performing team, breaking the rules, but they're so good at what they do.
I want to understand why.
Mm,
I'd like to understand why. Because I think having worked in an organization that embraced a hybrid work environment, I've gotten the appreciation for the people who are very active in the morning and the people who are like, please don't talk to me in the morning.
yeah.
So is this person this kind of person? Is this what their energy cycle looks like or what's going on? I
Mm,
would really like to understand, first of all, what's going on, because I also don't want it to become a habit. And I don't
yeah.
want it to escalate and become now it was not only were we not keeping time, now we are absconding all in totality.
Yeah. Um, And I think your approach is actually the right approach. In most cases, you'll find that sometimes it's just because, you know, they can get away with it, right? Because they're so good, they've been praised for so long, but they can get away with it, right? They're the kings of that maybe sector or particular department. And I found that difficult because high performing teams also sometimes need consistent praise, reinforcement that they're doing such a good job. But that doesn't mean that that the rest of the team is less valuable or there's an exception to how we do things, right? There are some exceptions, but if a value system is that we must always say show up on time, that is a value system also that they have to abide to. So culturally, it's that I think that's the most challenging thing. And I think the second one, similar to that, is how do you replicate the right benchmark behaviors within that team, right? Because you have some exceptional people in that team, but how do you replicate it? How do you make it a multiplication of many? And that is really one of the other challenges, I would say. So really making sure that they're not just thinking about this one team, you're thinking about ground up. And these are the things that as a leader and you're managing that team, you're trying to connect the dots. You're saying, hey, can you be mentored by this person? Can you speak to this person? So you're really trying to make sure that you're connecting the dots there.
Interesting approach. Stay anchored in what are the values, no matter what's going on, stay anchored in that. Now,
Yeah.
how do you handle conflict? You've spoken about the two people who just couldn't see eye to eye because of conflicting goals, or rather, or maybe they just couldn't see the common ground between their goals. How do you handle conflict within a high performing team?
Yeah. If you have a high performing team, remember some of the values that we talked about that we need to make sure we have. We said ownership, respect, transparency. First thing that you always want to do is foster open dialogue, right? Ensure that those two people, you'll find that these two people are arguing and they can't speak to each other. Um, they're hearing, but they're not listening. You can, there's no empathy to try and understand another person's point of view. So first thing that is important is to build open dialogue. So if somebody comes to you saying, can you first speak to them directly? If this is not resolved, can you write down kind of what was discussed? Can you try and solve it in that way? If it cannot be solved in that way, then you can come and maybe find a mediator, find somebody else who's not biased, your manager, your leaders. So that's the very first thing I would say to have culturally, and really encourage open dialogue amongst each other. I think the second thing to think about whenever you have conflict is to maybe, and I don't know if this is for everyone, but writing things down is so important. So before you come to like, let's speak, I'm like, okay, can you first write down? And when you see it written down, sometimes I feel like it eases in the mind of the person who is having this conflict, but also it makes, you can see as a mediator, you can see where the issues are coming from. And if it's processes, fix those processes. If it's personality, then think about aligning those personalities. Maybe sometimes if there are cases where you're going to need to move somebody to a different department, but at least have that open dialogue. And then again, understand the root cause and solve from that.
Alrighty. Thank you for sharing that. Because I'm just thinking sometimes an issue can be a monster in your head, but
Mm-hmm.
when you actually articulate it and write it down, you look at you have one paragraph and you had a mountain of emotion attached to it. Thank you for sharing that because it diffuses it. I'd not thought of it
Yeah,
that way. Because
yeah, exactly.
I have another guest mentor, the therapist. Her name is Grace Karaoke. She keeps
Yeah,
talking about, she calls it brain dumping. You journal every
yeah,
day, you journal and
yeah,
just brain dump, brain dump. I see now its application even in the workplace when you're dealing with
yeah.
conflicts. Thank you for sharing that.
Good,
Now,
good.
we are two people who are not seeing eye to eye. We've sat them down, they've spoken, open dialogue, we are on the same page. But we still have the issue of my goal and this other person's goal are kind of a bit in conflict with each other. But I'm choosing to trust that person A's actions will not negatively impact person B's goals, and person B's trusting that person A's action is not going to impact them negatively. And so now we're dealing with trust within the team.
Mm.
What strategies do you use then when you've gotten to this point to maintain trust within your team, especially during challenging times?
A mentor once told me, and I'll use that as maybe like A and B's, right? You kind of have team A and team B, and A and B not in terms of rank, just in terms of naming. So I'm not naming them based on who's better and who's not as good. So if you make success, so you say team A has to get to point this X, team B also has to get to point X. If you say success is only if team A and B get to success, then you kind of change things. And you say success is A and B, right? Instead of saying success is A, success is B, you're saying success is A and B. And for example, in that case where I gave the example of the conflict of between Asha and Nolene because of cost, in that case, that a new OKR should come up, right? So it's not, okay, Nolene, you just have to trust me. No. Or, okay, Asha, you just have to trust me. No. It's to sit down and say, okay, let's create our goal. What is our shared goal? And shared goals are really, really important when you're building high performing teams, because then it means every person has to bring something to the table. So Nolene commits to, I will select and implement the best ERP system. And Asha commits to, that will maybe keep margins or keep cost at a minimum of 30%, right? There you're defining a midway point. Do you see what I mean? So I think a really important thing there is to imagine a world in which the two have a shared goal. And that way you diffuse the tension that comes with one person must be able to achieve certain things. You will excuse
So,
my visitors.
it is okay. I'm actually grateful that they're even allowing us time with you. This is your family time. Thank you. Thank you very much. So
How did the endurance
it's okay.
fee?
I'll
The
come.
one that ends.
I'll come and
Sorry,
That is cool.
I'm
I'm
it's
sorry,
okay.
Nolina. I'm so
No,
sorry.
no, no, no. It is absolutely fine. Please don't apologize. It's okay. So, our next question, you have this high performing team. How do you manage a team with diverse personalities and working styles while ensuring they contribute positively to the team's performance? And usually I see this not just with personalities, but you're also dealing with different generations that have different work dynamics and different beliefs on how work should even be approached.
I feel like that's just kind of like every day, right? How you deal, how you manage every single day. I think very first thing is to welcome diversity. And welcoming diversity is like, for example, what I try and do is I find that the quietest people sometimes have the most insightful thing to say. Um, and the people who are quick to raise their hands also do, but because I've heard them a lot, I want to make sure that I select different people. And this is even a trick I learned, that whenever you have hybrid teams, if you're sitting in person with your team, never allow, not never, but it's encouraged to allow your teams that are remote to start. If you all are going around a circle, start with your remote team, right? It's a better way to feel inclusive. So the first thing is encourage that diversity and be able to listen to each other. As a manager and as a leader, be able to pick out those people and say, hey, I haven't heard from Nolene who has not spoken, right? So they know, they feel seen and heard. rather than, if two people kind of really talk and that's it and you only go with that, then it feels like, the only way to win here is by showing this kind of personality. So make sure that happens. And that usually, even, I felt like diversity specifically comes out with communication styles, right? You find that one person doesn't like to talk, the other person likes to speak, one person doesn't like to detail out whatever they're doing on email, the other person will just do it and let you know. Communication styles usually cause so much conflict. And so we do this thing now, or I've done this thing before, where I have people fill out, how do I like to communicate? And then I also state, this is my expectation, right? And this is what we expect as a team. Put certain things on paper, put certain things as processes. For example, if you're sending a contract, don't send it on Slack, on WhatsApp, on Teams. Contracts should always be on emails, right? So be open to certain things being standard. It doesn't matter where you are from, and then be flexible to allow different ways of doing things based on how people are where they are, and be intentional about being more inclusive, and be intentional about catching things that are not done in the right way. So for example, if somebody says, oh, I'm this and this, and therefore we don't do it like that, well, I'm like, well, this is a different team and this is how we do things. Catch that and catch that early. So it's a matter of reinforcing the things you want over and over again.
Okay. So when we're doing all this, we are reinforcing, we are actually calling out the person who's quiet to speak up during the team meeting or whatever it is. How do we do this? How do we encourage accountability? Because even speaking up is a form of accountability. You are voicing your opinion on a matter, and you're most probably the subject matter expert in your domain. How do we
Mm.
encourage accountability without coming across like we are trying to micromanage the team?
And then just to understand, how do you encourage accountability without becoming a micromanager?
Yes.
um, yeah. I always say there are two things. Um, Sometimes micromanagement can be a reflection of the person, of the manager, but it can also be a reflection of the individual who's being managed. So I think there's a misconception that all micromanagement is bad. I'm not a believer of that. I think I think there are times when you need to micromanage things, but it's not all the time. And whenever you micromanage somebody who's competent, who has earned your trust, who has been dependable, that's when things go wrong. But when you micromanage an intern or even somebody, a manager who's still growing, and maybe you've introduced them to something new and you need to be hands on and you need to check, and it's really critical and it's super important to the organization. I even usually give warning and say, by the way, this one I'm going to micromanage, just because I think that there's certain things that you haven't learned yet. And somebody's like, okay, Asha, cool, right? Now, if you micromanage somebody who is competent, has been dependable, and you still feel the need to ask and get into the weeds, then I guess the big question is why? Why are you doing that, right? Why do you feel that you need to do that? So accountability should not be combined with micromanagement. Accountability is set up by strong systems, strong processes, strong personal drive, clarity in the things that they need to do, a very great process of checking in on things. And micromanagement is a form of intense support, sometimes required and sometimes unrequired, and that's when it causes havoc. So make sure, if you want accountability to work well, um, make sure it's clear what they need. They're clear how to get your support. It's clear how they can solve it, and you're clear as well. And if you're the one who's being micromanaged, you may probably need to ask your manager, by the way, I've noticed that, you know, I feel like there's a lot of support here and I can do it. Is there a way you can give me some autonomy and agency so that I can learn? And if you're the one who's micromanaging and that feedback has come to you, ask yourself why. And maybe even approach that conversation, say, hey, I've noticed I've been micromanaging you. And it's because of these things. So that's kind of my view.
Kalira, if you're
But
going
not
to
all
micromanage,
management is bad.
sorry?
I think not all, but not all micromanagement is bad.
It's
There are
bad.
times when, yeah,
I hear you. And I like the fact that you have made a very clear distinction between being held accountable versus being micromanaged. It's in there,
yeah,
and I like that you made it very, very clear. So,
good.
next question. Once a team is high performing, how do you ensure they continue to grow and avoid complacency? How do you make sure we don't plateau or we don't get,
Um,
um, sorry for cutting you short, you know how it
okay.
said living in the glory of past victories? How do
Yeah,
you make sure that we continue to grow and avoid complacency?
yeah. Whenever you have goals, this is kind of what you do with teams. Whenever you think about setting the goals, think about what must achieve, and then what are stretch goals, right? Individuals should have stretch goals. Stretch goals are really stretch goals, right? Um, and they require additional effort, support, etc., to be able to accomplish. So it's super important for you to think about setting stretch goals for your teams, for individuals as well. So one of the things that I've seen with maybe different team members is I would, for example, see a super talented person, but maybe hasn't built enough skill when it comes to strategy. And strategy can be quite hard. Um, and so you kind of give them small projects to think about. Hey, but a stretch goal is for you to be able to manage this, to define the strategy of how we launch this, right? So that's a stretch goal. And then, and that would require them to work cross-functionally, many other things, and then think about what are goals that you must be able to accomplish to be successful in your role. So that's kind of the way to infuse more challenges. I think challenges usually breed desire and drive to grow and must then force you to to get there. um and then I think with that also you couple that with feedback. Say, for example, Nolene, this is what we need. This is a stretch goal for you to be able to get there. I think you need a data-driven mindset. Are there any data-driven courses? Is there a mentor you can speak to? But the best place where you can get people to grow is by doing. You grow by doing, not just by amassing a lot of knowledge. You grow specifically in your career by doing.
Alrighty. So, what are some methods you use to measure team performance beyond meeting targets?
Yeah, and that's a critical one because it's outcomes based. When people think targets, they think money, right? Um, well, it's important to make money because you have to keep the lights on. The other targets, I guess, when you think about an OKRs as an objective, right? This is what we want to do, and these are key results within it. I would think about key results that allow us to get to that target. That's really, really important. Most times you'll find that, say you didn't hit your revenue target, you didn't hit your impact target, but you made every single customer that worked with you exceptionally happy, and they said they're going to refer you. I mean, that's outstanding, right? Outstanding. And the opposite could be true, right? You hit 100% of your target, even 120% of your target, but every single customer was upset. So you have to really think about targets that enable behavior as well, right? So you don't just want people to do the things and not think about the behavior that we want. We want clients happy. We want to deliver goodness in the world. We want to do this impact. So think about those targets as well. What are some of the behaviors? It could be client, for example, client satisfaction. It could be um, your team is happy, so team health. So, for example, you can say our target is to meet this revenue target, but your team was fighting the entire time. By the end of it, you have 4 people who've quit at the end of the year. I mean, you've lost such critical people to really enabling that. So think about the targets, the behaviors you want. You want your team to work as one. So maybe add those targets as part of your overall target as a key result, right? Rather than just one objective that would probably it comes at all cost. Yeah. I think that's the thing. Think about, don't allow your one target to be at all
Mm-hmm.
costs kind of target.
Alrighty. So hearing you also, not just the what was achieved, but the how it was achieved. How are people
Yeah.
feeling? How are customers feeling? The people
Exactly.
aspect also. How do you create an
Mm.
environment that encourages innovation and creativity within your team?
I think there's this kind of analogy that says, ribbons and rewards, right? It's think about what is celebrated is encouraged. Um, so encourage it publicly. When people solve things differently, encourage it publicly. When things are done in a new and innovative way, encourage it. If you have budget, think about teams that can specifically think about I think we lost each other for a minute, but we're back. Think about teams that can really think about that consistently, um, and think about a depth of the innovation as well. So it's not just about I found a new way to solve it. Is it replicable? Right. So you want the quality of the innovation to matter as well, not just the quantity. But celebrate it, set the benchmark, and when you celebrate it, explain the reason why you're celebrating it. Nolene, are you still there? Okay. Yeah, yes. Explain the reason why you're celebrating it. So don't just say, we congratulate Nolene or Asha for this new innovation. Talk about what exactly why that innovation is important. She has solved a new way of doing things that will be replicated in all our markets. We really commend her. It's data driven. So you're kind of setting the bar about the environment, about the innovation itself as well. But you're also encouraging it by rewarding, praising, especially getting recognition for it. That's one of the best ways to do it. And then really I saw this in a different company where they asked, what does the customer think? Every time the products team did something, the CEO would ask, what does the customer think, right? What does the customer think about this new process? What does the customer think? And it wasn't just about the product, it was about if there was a feature in that product, what does the customer think about this? And that forced a little more innovation around, are we really, because innovation really comes and creativity comes from deeply understanding a problem, and by pushing people to understand that further, you're able to solve it in a better and meaningful way. So think about you as a leader enabling that by asking the right questions um, about those particular uh, innovations and creativity that's coming up, but really encourage it.
Alrighty. I see we are well at the top of the hour. So before we go any further, I want to ask if you have more time that you can give to us, or if you would like for us to close it at this point, since we've already spent our 1 hour.
Well, you've seen my little people
Yeah.
trying to get my attention, so I will beg to pause from here now.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Asha. I think this is one of those mentorship sessions that I will keep coming back to again and again and again. And I think it's of paramount importance for anybody who is leading a team of more than one. As long as you're not an individual contributor, I think this is one of those mentorship sessions we need to keep revisiting again and again and again and again. Thank you so, so much for making the time. Thank you so much for sharing of your wisdom and of your knowledge. And thank you to your family too for allowing us this 1 hour of your 1 hour, 10 minutes of your time today evening. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Blessings to you and to your family.
Thank you so much, Nalin. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the amazing work you're doing. I think it's really important. I don't think we have enough stories of African leaders. And I'm not talking about, public big leaders. I'm talking about everyday leaders. And I think this is such a great way to put together a lot of great expertise. I commend you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. We have come to the end of this week's mentorship session. Thank you, Asha, from me and from the audience, those who are catching us live, those who will catch the recording now and into the future. We thank you. Thank you very, very much. Goodbye, everyone. I'll see you next week during the next mentorship session. Have a fantastic balance of day.